50 years ago, during a dangerous mission over Vietnam, an A-6 Intruder and its two-man crew disappeared, leaving their families with no answers. Lieutenant Richard Lanham and his pilot Shurik seemed to vanish into thin air. But decades later, investigators uncovered something astonishing. Now, the question is, what do they find? Let's see. In 1968, three A-6 Intruder planes took off from the USS Enterprise for a critical mission over Vietnam. For one of the planes and its two-man crew Lanham and his pilot Shurik. During this time, the Vietnam War was at its peak. When Lanham and his pilot Shurik vanished in March 1968, the United States was deeply entangled in the conflict. The North Vietnamese, supported by their Chinese allies, referred to the war as the Resistance War Against America. That broader conflict was the Cold War. The Vietnam War became one of the most intense battlegrounds in this global rivalry, where every battle carried international significance. In January 1968, the Vietnam War reached a turning point with the Tet Offensive. Over 8,500 North Vietnamese fighters launched attacks on more than 100 South Vietnamese cities, including the American embassy in Saigon. Many towns fell, and two more large-scale assaults soon followed, intensifying the conflict. After the Tet Offensive, the USS Enterprise resumed its journey to the Tonkin Gulf on January 30th. By February 16th, it reached Yankee Station, a critical naval base 90 miles off North Vietnam's coast. On February 21st, the ship began preparing for combat missions. 2 days later, despite monsoon rains, Attack Squadron 35's A-6 Intruders launched their first mission, targeting Hanoi, North Vietnam's capital. Among the squadron was Lieutenant Richard C. Lanham's unit. The mission was deemed a success, marking an impactful start to their deployment. When it comes to these types of A-6 missions, the words of Admiral William F. Bringle, Vice Commander of the 7th Fleet, offer a glimpse into what men like Shurik and Lanham faced. On the POW Network website, Admiral Bringle described the challenges of these missions, giving us an idea of their difficulty and danger. Admiral Bringle stated that the low-level night missions flown by the A-6 over Hanoi and Haiphong were some of the most demanding ever assigned to aircrews. Thankfully, these squadrons were filled with talented, brave, and determined leaders who rose to the challenge. Lanham and Shurik's missions were anything but easy. Despite heavy rains and the harsh conditions of the Northeast Asian monsoon season, the A-6 crews continued their flights, showing unmatched dedication and courage. It's been said that the Airman welcomed the bad weather, which lingered from February into March. Speaking of March, on the evening of March 1st, 1968, three A-6 Intruders launched from the USS Enterprise at 6 p.m. The lead plane, designated Number 1, was piloted by Squadron Commander Glenn Coleman with Johnny Griffin as his navigator. The second plane carried Lieutenant Commander Greg Young and Navigator Bill Siegel. The third plane was crewed by Lanham and Shurik. The mission plan was split between two targets. Coleman's plane was tasked with striking the strategically significant Tan Hoi Bridge, while the other two planes, including Lanham and Shurik's, were assigned to hit the Comfort Barracks, about 90 miles from Hanoi. After departing the Enterprise, the three planes met at their prearranged point near the North Vietnamese coast. Once final weapons and communications checks were complete, Coleman led the way west toward the heavily defended and notoriously resilient bridge. As Young's plane headed north toward Camphor, the route was filled with dangers. The sea below was dotted with jagged islands, making low-altitude flying risky. Adding to the challenge, the area was heavily defended by North Vietnamese anti-aircraft units. Flying at 1,500 feet, Young moved in for the attack, while Shurik confirmed over the radio that he was ready too. Young's plane successfully dropped its bombs. Meanwhile, Lanham's plane switched off its identification transmitter, likely to avoid detection. At 2,500 feet, Lanham's plane disappeared from radar. With the transmitter off, it effectively vanished into the hostile skies. With its transmitter off, the A-6 was undetectable except by sight. The three planes had a prearranged meeting point for regrouping after the mission, chosen for cases of lost radio contact or damage. Two planes arrived as planned, but Lanham and Shurik's aircraft was missing. The crew searched the area but found no sign of the plane. When the search turned up empty, they tried to reach Lanham and Shurik over the radio. After receiving no response, they immediately alerted search and rescue teams. Unfortunately, the rescue teams also came up short. No emergency signals from the A-6 were detected, and there was no wreckage to be found. The disappearance of the aircraft remained a complete mystery. It seemed as if Lanham and Shurik's plane vanished into thin air. The two remaining A-6s waited as long as they could, hoping their missing comrades would appear. But with fuel running low, they had no choice but to head back to the Enterprise. As they made their way to the carrier, they radioed in to report their teammates missing. Upon hearing the news, the next group of planes scheduled for attack immediately dropped their bombs and shifted focus to search for the missing A-6. Lanham and Shurik's fellow crew members began a thorough search. Bob Benjamin, a member of Attack Squadron 35, later shared his experience on the Intruder Association website. He had been flying in one of the planes that abandoned their mission to help search. I remember it was a clear but dark night. If there had been a fire from the wreckage, we would have seen it, but there was nothing. We searched near Camp 4, the island, the areas south, west, and east, even going as far as the Chinese border, but found no sign of the wreckage. Sadly, there was no fire, no survival radio signal, just eerie silence. Camp 4 was a place that made low-level flying deadly, with limestone formations and mountains creating dangerous conditions. After a fruitless search, Lanham and Shurik were declared missing in action. The Navy believed their plane went down about 29 miles from Camp 4 in the Bay of Tonkin. Yet, no one knew for sure where the plane had crashed or if the men had ejected before being captured. Speculation suggested they might have been taken by the communists, but there was no proof. Hope remained that they might be alive, held in a North Vietnamese POW camp. There was still hope that they had survived and were being held in a North Vietnamese POW camp. After all, many other American airmen had faced similar fates, but this too led to nowhere. When U.S. forces withdrew from Vietnam in 1973, just under 600 American prisoners of war were released, but Lanham and Shurik were not among them. The mystery remained unsolved. As of December 2018, the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency reported that 1,592 Americans are still missing. The years passed, and Lanham and Shurik's families were left in uncertainty, not knowing what had happened to their loved ones. Then, in 1978, the Navy declared Shurik was no longer missing in action, but was presumed dead. However, for both families, there was still no grave to visit, leaving them to mourn without closure. What do you think could have happened to their plane that fateful night? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you can see more videos like this. See you in our next video. Until then, take care, and thanks for watching.